Okay, you're live.
Welcome to our afternoon panel. Our afternoon panel is on successfully driving technology for the remote worker and preserving human connection and motivation. So thanks for joining us. I'm David Guralnick from Kaleidoscope Learning in New York, and I'm joined by a couple of panelists, and we have one more trying to connect, should be joining us momentarily. So we're delighted to have you with us and delighted to talk about some challenges that people have faced over the last several months during the quick shift to remote work. What I'd like to do first is just let each of our panelists introduce themselves, and I'll give you a little bit more about myself as well, and then we'll move on to some questions. As we do this, as we go through the session, please feel free to ask questions in the chat and the Q&A. I think the Q&A is the appropriate place, but we'll check both, and we will. We'd love to have audience participation even in a virtual environment as much as we can. So should be a fast-paced 40 minutes, and we're looking forward to it. So let me go ahead and introduce my panelists. We will have Linda Kai, who's the Global Head of Learning and Talent Development at Aon Corporation, joining us momentarily. We have Matt Bocci, Vice President of Training from United Shore, and we have Julie McJunkin, Sales Enablement Operations Manager from BrainShark. So we're happy to have all of those. We can go ahead and start with of your 30-second introductions. Julie, you want to start with you?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Julie McJunkin. I'm the Sales Enablement Operations Manager at BrainShark. In my current role, I report up through the Vice President of Sales Enablement and our Chief Sales Officer. I think what's unique about our role here at BrainShark is we are twofold. We are sales enablement professionals supporting all customer-facing teams, and we also provide a cadre of industry best practices to customers and prospects. My area of focus is around tools and technology, onboarding, coaching, and training.
Great, thanks, Matt.
Hey, how y'all doing? My name's Matt Bocci. I'm the Vice President of Training here at United Shore, United Wholesale Mortgage. We are the second largest lender in the United States, first largest wholesale lender in the country for 6 years running. We have about 7,000 team members. I head up the training function here at the company. I have about 200 trainers on staff that primarily support people in operations, underwriting, support, leadership, and all these different programs and curriculums throughout the country. Last year, we were ranked as the 5th best training organization in the world by Training Magazine, and hopefully this year we'll be even a little bit higher after we get done.
Terrific. All right, Matt, thanks so much for being here, and we've just in time been joined by Linda, and it's great to see. Linda, can you hear me okay? And I see you online, and you're ready. You can hear me okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Fantastic. Well, we were just getting to your introduction, so if you don't mind doing jumping right into the fire, just a 30-second introduction of yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Of course. Thank you, David. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Linda Tai. I lead the Global Learning, Leadership, and Talent Development team. So in my role, I'm responsible for the global learning strategy, the learning platforms, and we provide from leadership to hyper talent development to early career programs, learning experience to our 50,000 colleagues around the world. And personally, I live in Chicago. I've had first 10 years as more consulting experience, and then the last 10 years focusing on change management, culture, and leadership development.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much. And then I promised I'd introduce myself briefly after our panelists. I'm David Guralnick. I am President and CEO of Kaleidoscope Learning in New York, which is a company that provides custom online learning and strategic consulting to a mix of companies and also universities. My own background is really in the mix of kind of right at the nexus of cognitive science, computer science, and education. So how can we take technology and create technology to do interesting and different things to help people perform better and help people learn better? And that's kind of been my focus for really about the past 25 or 30 years. And I'm a long-time participant and speaker and panel host here at this conference, and it's great to be back with Denise and with everybody else. So then let's start talking about what we're here to talk about, which is the challenges that we faced and the successes that people have had, and all of those things over the complex time that we're in, and the sudden change from what was some sense of normal that we may still remember at this point, and all of a sudden moving to, among other things, all virtual learning, all remote workers. So the first question that I want to ask everyone was, what's the greatest challenge that you faced as you suddenly moved to being all remote? So what's been that challenge, and what have you been able to do to address it? So we can start with anyone who wants to tell their story first. Linda, you want to start with you?
Okay, I guess that's a gentle punishment for me showing up late. So I'll take that, David.
I was thinking it was continuity. You were already speaking most
not
recently.
a problem at all. So
this is not a punishment. You know, this is not the system we believe in. Anyway, we're
no problem. Yeah, no. Thank you for asking. I think it's a great question, but I think I would just summarize that. Number one, COVID kind of presented a situation that technology is not an opt-in solution. It's not optional. You have to embrace it, live with it, and excel at it. So it kind of showed up the different generations, kind of the digital savviness, and particularly in senior or executive population where they historically had a lot of an administrative support, and now suddenly they have to do everything themselves. And the second thing I'll say is we're reaching a point that everyone is living on webcam almost 10, 12 hours, and we sleep where we work. You know, we don't have that compartmentalized kind of change of scene opportunity. So people are really getting burned out. So that's another challenge is we feel always on, and how do we avoid people feeling WebEx fatigue? And we talk a lot about resilience right now. So
yeah, absolutely. What have you been able to do to combat that as you've seen that happening? Have you been able to help people feel a little bit better about about the world that they're living in, always being on?
Yeah, I think number one is being authentic and open the dialogue to talk about it, right? It's real. People initially feel that they can't open up in fear of losing their jobs. They feel like if they want to ask for, block time or juggling family duties, kids at home, taking care of sick parents, etc., that's seen as not performing. So they hide the situation. They try to, do it all. So I think the number one is we open up several listening sessions and forums to hear from them what they are dealing with, and to kind of welcome them, bring their personal challenges and family situations into work dialogues. And then how do we help leaders to have those conversations and be flexible and focusing on the priorities? So there's a lot of pivoting we have done through conversations and training. So I'm happy to expand more, but I'm also curious how other panelists think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about the greatest challenge that you face and a little bit about how you've overcome it. Matt, you want to go next?
I think they're probably very similar to what Linda was speaking of here. I think getting people to adopt the new, I think, is the biggest challenge, right? So before you could do like 85, 90% instructor-led training, and your day was great. People showed up for class, and and that was it, right? And we got used to the routines. I think that the blessing of all of the craziness and the pandemic going on is that we have literally, it's kind of forced people to see things in a new way. So things that people weren't eager to adopt before are very eager to adopt now. Technologies that people were resistant to pay for now they're super eager to pay for them to improve the virtual environments that people got to learn in now. So I think that even though it's given us tons of things to overcome, I think it's given us a lot of opportunities in regards to, like, how do you make training more flexible? How do you make it work around people's schedules, like Linda was speaking of? How do you make it so the single mom can go to the class, or someone who can't reach the 2 o'clock class can also make up another offering at 5 o'clock? So do you have offerings? Is your curriculum flexible enough to let people attend when and as they needed? I think that the hardest part is getting people to adopt the new technologies that you're using to deliver the training. But once you get them to adopt it, I think you also have the plus side is you got way more options and way more flexibility to deliver training to people at any given time, put it right at their fingertips at a time that works best with them and their life as they see it right now. So I think it's at one time it's kind of like a hard thing, but right now at my company we're 7,000 people. 89% of our training right now is all done virtually now. It's almost completely did a 180 from where we were to where we are now. And now I think people are seeing the value in, like, wow, I can really train 600 people at one given time and any given second. So I think people are just like, you don't have to explain the value to them now. Now they're actually seeing it and they want more and more of it. Kind of like Netflix. The minute people are like, wow, I can watch an entire series like here on my own in my own self-directed place. Like now people are like, I need more of that. And I think that's the part where people are getting more and more excited about training now because they're seeing it being delivered in ways they've never experienced it before. Especially for the old timers that know, like, oh, I can just turn that on by pushing that button. Like, oh, I can clap by pushing this. Like, to them, it's a new thing. I think it's going to get more and more people engaged, and it's going to give them a lot more flexibility for self-reliant learning remotely across the country, across the globe. So it's a win as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Were there things that you had to do in order to get people to sort of embrace this kind of, the binge training mentality that they seem to now have adopted? Did you, were there things that you had to do to help kind of, guide people and help them feel comfortable as they made the transition? It sounds like you're in a position now where they've really transitioned to at least online, virtual learning online, maybe not more than that. But were there things that you had to do to get them there?
Oh yeah, and I think Linda could probably co-sign this. I think most of the panelists on this team would probably say this. Like, you had to communicate more than you've ever communicated, especially as like we were first rolling out. So like when March and April and COVID first hit, like it's kind of like people talked about Netflix for years, but they were still using Blockbuster. They kept showing up to this. Like, you literally had to tell them, like, hey, this is available. This is how you get to it. This is how you do it. So I think that learning how to over-communicate by design and making sure that that message was getting out there on a consistent basis. You couldn't just, like, communicate at once, like, hey, this training's offered here, and then forget about it. Like, you literally had to follow up on every communication you sent and not assume that it was happening. So I think, like, learning how to over-communicate through different forms and through different mediums on a consistent basis was probably the things that we had to get best at to get people to adopt it more. Once they picked it up though, like the new Zoom technology and all, like, people just took off with it. But over communication, our process for communication were good before. To do this well, you got to be great at communicating, and most importantly, you got to be great at following up on the message that you're sending.
Great. Well, thanks. Julie, I know you've got a slightly different kind of company, a little bit different perspective. So I'd love to hear your perspective on challenges you faced and how you've been able to overcome them with your clients or within your company or both.
Yeah, sure. Truly, David and Matt and Linda both picked on it. It's that communication piece, right? So from an enablement perspective, when we're deploying content, it is that reminder. It's that reminder in the platform, in our own platform. It's that link, quick link to Slack. It's the ability to communicate that there is content, training, coaching available just in time as needed, right? That flexibility of the working mom, the working family, adjusting for school and elder care. So it's there at any time, any place. We're overwhelmed with email. I mean, I can't imagine what our 4 inboxes might look like, but it's those subtle nuances that say, hey, this is here and available for you. We have leaderboards if we wanted to track peer against peer. And so we can still make it, that little bit of competition that any, working team enjoys. But it is that communication piece, and we actually implement a communication plan so that we know where we're starting and where we're going to follow through, at what point in time are we sending those reminders, and how flexible we need to be with that stuff. And then it's just that transparency. If you're having a difficult time, share it with us. We need to know, right? Your leadership team, your line management team. We are really transparent here at BrainShark, and we share that best practice with all of our customers and prospects.
Great. Well, following on this sort of for everybody, what was people's comfort level, especially thinking back maybe to March or April when this was sort of new? So communication is clearly a critical piece, as everybody's mentioned, but sometimes you'll communicate something and people will know that they should do it, but maybe they just can't quite feel comfortable doing it yet, or they're not sure what to do. So was that something that you encountered, and if so, how did you overcome that?
I'm just going to jump in. waiting for you to call?
No, please. This is an
Okay.
open conversation. I will
All
only call
right.
when there's a dead silence.
Okay. So I was just going to say that's a very good observation. I think everyone's kind of going through this rapid learning curve, how they adapt to the new learning style, new learning environment. One of the things we observe is that we underestimate how much just peer-to-peer learning you get on the job in the normal office environment. So if you have a small problem with Excel, whatever, you just reach over and ask your colleague, hey, how do you do this? And normally you get it solved on the spot, right? And when you're home, you don't have that opportunity. So one of the things we did was to encourage Yammer, which is the social interaction site we use within AR. And we noticed that in April and May, the site usage went up 40%. So people would actually got together and share tips on how do you do certain things on WebEx Teams. And these are the things I did to make my working life more productive. And those tips are being shared like viral. So those really worked well. And the other thing we did well is along similar lines. People like to get communication, but they also like to hear stories about colleagues that just like them. So we ran a communication series on the internet homepage, and it's called I Am a Remote Worker. And it's literally spotlighting real colleagues, what they do in the day. And these are the resources they leverage in order to organize their work and help juggling their other things in life. And it's been really, really a hit. So we couldn't stop. Like we keep having volunteers coming to us and say, I want to share what I have tried and that's successful.
Great. No, that's great. That sounds like
Yeah.
well. Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
To Linda's point, training is social, and I think the more you create a community for people to learn and share those things, the better they're going to be. We've leveraged our technology here, Cornerstone On Demand, our learning communities within Cornerstone, and also Microsoft Teams communities to create breakout sessions for specific and targeted groups. I think usually when people are uncomfortable, it's because they need assurance or to be reassured from either their peers or someone around them that, hey, it's new, but it's good, and you're going to get better because of it. I think once people have that reassurance, it gives them a place where they can help each other get over the adversity that they're facing, and it also creates buy-in. So I think whenever I think of the people learning their communities, one of the things we talk about at our place, and we didn't make these up, but the 5 fundamentals of learning, like doing equals learning, people who don't argue their own data, people retain more when they have fun, people learn differently, and then also like the brain doing the talking is the one doing the learning. Like you can do all those things virtually in these communities, and you can still get learners involved by so what Linda was saying, having them get up and spotlight themselves or participating or leading an activity or leading an icebreakers. Like there's a number of ways that you can get them involved besides just talking at them. You can actually have them do the majority of the talking and learn twice as much. Even better, have them talk amongst each other through the technology, so that way they're getting more and more out of it.
Great. Julie, anything else to add to this one?
Yeah, if I could chime in, I think Matt makes a great point. We throw in one other element here, and that's we talk about the peer-to-peer learning, but it's also peer-to-peer coaching, right? You think about it a lot, from an onboarding perspective, but now again, without, I'm jealous of Matt and his office environment there on the screen. But it's pairing up people for the sake of just taking a moment, whether it's 15 minutes on, a Zoom call or whatever platform you're leveraging to talk through the day. And we are interacting across departments just for people to have that, interaction, that office kind of interaction that you might have. And, that filters into our training and our coaching and our learning, where we are, again, having people do it online, record yourself, give your elevator pitch and have a peer listen to it instead of a manager or a coach. And we're finding so much engagement with that, and reps and sellers across the board are really embracing that.
Great. Let me ask a more. Let's see. We have a question that I think I did not raise when Linda was talking, but it's for you, Linda. It's from Jacqueline Whelan. It says, "How are you engaging your leadership to be aware of fatigue and the lack of boundaries due to working at home? And then after you created awareness, how did you encourage awareness and shifts in behavior?" So it's a two-part question under the Q&A. I can repeat if you need.
What's the second part, David?
Second part was, after you created awareness, how did you encourage awareness and shifts in behavior? So after you created it, how did you then encourage, I guess, really particularly the shifts in behavior? Yeah, was the second part of the question. So first was engaging leadership to be aware of fatigue and lack of boundaries, and the second was, once you got them to be aware, how do you encourage shifts in behavior?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And we are on this journey, as many organizations here you represented are. So it's not like we cracked the code, but we are trying different things. So firstly, I think I totally believe leadership and the mindset shift is at the core of having a more resilient and a flexible working culture. So many senior leaders being successful, they got to where they are today because they are very strong on planning, and they, like in better word, probably high control type of style. And that does present some challenges in kind of the virtual environment. So bring awareness to them is number one. We have a senior leadership, executive leadership group, the top 180, around maybe 200. So they meet monthly, and for 2 months, we got them together to look at the engagement data, to look at the listening forum themes we collected around the world. We talked to, just on top of my head, a couple of listening sessions with colleagues, engaged 500 in 4 regions. We talked to 300 interns. These are interns who basically had the whole internship with us virtually. We also talked to other multi-generational, millennial included workforce to understand what kind of challenges they are dealing with. So we presented all these data to the top 200. So for 2 months, every time they meet, they talk about what we heard from the workforce. We also asked them to brainstorm. They go into breakout groups and talk about what are the things they could do with their teams to have better work-life boundaries. Either it's WebEx etiquette. For example, not every WebEx people need to turn on camera. I kind of have this WebEx neck because I'm having to stare at one direction for 8 hours straight. So maybe some team meetings, you don't have to turn camera on. We get them to brainstorm different things that they could test with their teams, but really encourage them to have an honest conversation with their teams to develop a set of protocols that will help every member to feel included, considered, and feel more comfortable balancing all the different needs and demands. So those are the things we tried.
Great. And you feel like they've been overall been successful?
Yeah, it does shake a lot of their assumptions. For example, not everyone has a proper study or the setup to allow them work comfortably for 5-6 hours. We showed pictures people posted on Yammer, like in India, people are working on coffee table in a very cramped kitchen, or like graduates or people flat share with multiple people in one flat, and it's just impossible to really have that kind of attention and productivity. So how do you be more mindful of really people's personal circumstances and help them to be more sustainable. So there's no one size fits all answer. It's really just heighten their awareness about their team, and then being humble, listening, and jointly problem solve with the team.
Yeah, and I guess following on that a little bit, sort of the concept that people are almost always on now. Like it's hard to know even more than ever before when work, when work ends, does work end, right? And that's a question for people. So you've made leadership aware, but this is really for everybody. Are there things that you've been able to do for employees to help people feel comfortable stopping work at some point, or to assure them that there are times when they can be turned off? How have you dealt with that so that people continue to be happy and productive, and yet on the other hand also find sometimes, and maybe some people, in my experience, need to be encouraged to turn off a little bit, because otherwise it's just, there's a natural instinct to just kind of, oh, there's another email, I guess I'll answer my other email, and you keep going and you turn around and it's midnight. So how do you handle that as a company? Anybody who wants to jump in?
I think it's about setting expectations with your leaders. I think across the board, we offered a lot of empathy, and also the emotional intelligence training for our leaders when all this started. So it's self-awareness, social awareness, picking up on that, but also requiring by process and set expectations. You have to have consistent check-ins with your teams, especially as they're working remotely in all these places. It can't just be you check in once a day and that's it. And it can't only be the scheduled check-in. So it's if you're required to check in twice a day, you should be checking in 3-4 times a day, just to let people know that you're thinking of them and you're actually working with them. But it's also setting the expectation that, hey, people are working from home. They do have kids running around the living room. So you do have to be a lot more flexible in regards to they may or may not be able to make that meeting at 10 o'clock because maybe that's the time they're still coming back from daycare. So you have to have, as leaders, be flexible, have alternative options for team members to either receive the information or to attend another meeting at a different time. So I think it's really working on the empathy and understanding, and also working with your leaders to be flexible with all your people who are working at home. I mean, ultimately, the people are the most important asset that you have. And if you're not taking care of them, you don't show them how much you care, they're going to go somewhere where people will. So I think that when you have people working remotely, reach out often, set an expectation that you should be reaching out often, and also set the expectation hey, be flexible. These people are going through a lot of stuff right now. And if you want to keep them around and you want to make them great and therefore make your organization great, you also got to be flexible and adaptable to the time that we're in right now. That's what we've been doing. So I'm not.
No, sounds great. Julie? Anything to add?
Absolutely. Actually, we took it one step further when we think about, being on all the time, right? People transitioned. All of a sudden, company email is now on personal phones because that's the way that we need to communicate or connect. And we literally just had one Zoom session that reminded folks on your phone that you could stop notifications at a certain time. And we encouraged people to say, hey, you know what? 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, if that's the time that you're putting your little ones down, there is no expectation that you're going to respond. And we, as an enablement team, we went around and said, hey, did you do that on your phone? And some people would say, yes, I did it. And other people are like, no, I didn't. No, go ahead and do it. It's okay, and it was that reassurance, from not only our enablement team, but our line management team.
Great. And it seems like this has kind of come up in a few different ways, that there's really the need and has been the need for an overall mindset change in the way that the work culture is structured, right? So there's, for example, presumably there's an extreme level of trust, as I would think there should be. If you have the right people, you trust that they're going to work hard and toward performance goals. But now you don't see, you just assume that that's what's happening, and you're in communication, but it's a different way. You're not standing next to people. It's different things. So sort of following along that, are there things that you guys have all seen in the past several months that you think are, good, positive, permanent changes that you've made, that you now think should be permanent? So suppose that a year from now, people are back in an office to whatever degree, at least to a significant degree, and that's probably a different question for another panel discussion, but to some degree, and Matt, seemingly already is. What are some things that you think you want to maintain that have really come about because of the change to the virtual workforce? Anybody
David, I'll go.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. And again, not only internally from a BrainShark, but what we're seeing from, from our customer base is the idea that so many organizations had to shift to this remote training, right? Whether it was your onboarding, just ad hoc training, product releases, right? We're attempting to be business as usual, but it's doable. It's doable, and you can reflect that in so many different facets. I mean, we helped one company reduce new hire training by 40% because it was remote, right? And you focus on whether you're, a national company, an international company, maybe you have these buckets where it's, this week it's going to be, EMEA, this week it's going to be, your LAC team, whatever that might be. And people are realizing that this is attainable and doable. And the concept of going back into the office, while we all appreciate that face-to-face learning, remote learning, that emotional connection, that intellectual connection is available. We just have to keep pushing it, drawing on it, enhancing it, advancing it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And one of my things that I've kind of looked at moving forward is seeing how people might eventually employ technology in different ways. That's in my own area for a number of years. Is we can build learning experiences that are online, whether they're group activities or individual activities that are things that people emotionally connect with. They could be more individual. They could be much more active and interesting, and follow learn by doing. And my own early work was in learn by doing simulations. So there are a lot of things that we can do that we probably won't get to in detail in this conversation. But you can see another level where people start to take on a little bit more, individuality in some of their own views about what they can do and how they can spend their time, and use technology to help them do that. Before we move on, we do have a question from the audience that I want to get to all panelists. So again, please, whoever wants to jump in. Question is, what kind of empathy and emotional intelligence training was provided to leaders when the pandemic hit? So we've kind of jumped around this a little bit, that there was this need for change, obviously. So what kind of empathy and emotional intelligence training was provided to your leaders within your organizations, if anything?
Well, I know I kind of brought the topic up, so I kind of speak to it a little bit. We did a lot of DISC training in regards to identifying the specific personality types that people have. We also did strengths finders to identify people's strengths, and also emotional awareness. And then we did a lot of stuff from the Arbringer Institute in regards to the learning about leadership and self-deception, and getting yourself out of the box to have more empathy when you're actually speaking to your team members, and as they're going through all these things, like, are you actually listening and being mindful of those things? So the Arbringer Institute has a lot of really good stuff in regards to leadership and self-deception that really plays very well into having more empathy and listening more than you're talking when you're interacting with your team members, and also, most importantly, getting your people involved in the process itself. So I think they offer a whole bunch of stuff in regard, but obviously, like the self-awareness and social awareness training were really the two big ones we kind of keyed on, and then we signed up people remotely for a lot of these additional courses that we had from Lectora and some other online participants that we partnered with. But Arbringer is my favorite
one. We took a slight different approach. Kind of, we don't want to just push out empathy or emotional intelligence training like standalone offerings, but more like what kind of ultimate culture goals that we want to have, and kind of make those as the path to get to the goal. So what is important to us from a culture standpoint is a collaborative culture. We call that Aon United, bringing different businesses and colleagues together in more agile teams and developing integrated client offerings. So that's number one. And number two is definitely inclusion. So a diverse but equitable workplace that everyone feels a sense of belonging. So from that standpoint, it's intuitive that empathy and emotional intelligence, self-awareness is underpinning all these behaviors we want leaders to demonstrate. So we had several frameworks that many leaders who have gone through similar training are raving about. They are all very easy to understand and practice. And the other thing I want to point out is the actionable. Like, if they work out with some concept, what they can do differently from today. So one concept is this iceberg. Many of you have heard. So above the line, below the line, how do you look for commonalities and connect with each other? And then the other thing is, particularly for leaders who are busy and overwhelmed, how do you know that when you are in the downs, kind of just doing things, when do you need to elevate yourself to stand on the balcony and kind of reflect, creating that reflection space for yourself so you can strategize, you can prioritize, and also help your team to do the same. So these are just simple things. On your previous question, David, which is also related to this one, is a check-in practice that leaders are doing now, and I think we should keep after COVID. So every team meeting, the first 10 minutes, we ask leaders to go around and just ask everyone, how are you feeling? Like 1 or 2 words describing how you are feeling. What's interfering? Any distractions, either at work or at home? And what kind of help or support you want from the group. I think we should keep doing that. And then that's pretty much, I think, it's empathy-based as well.
Absolutely.
Linda makes a good point. You can't just push out empathy train on people. It does have to be happening in a collaborative space as well. So it has to be a blended approach. You can push it out by modules, but you definitely have to have workshops. Another thing we did, we also had a diversity inclusion coaches that we've hired that have one-on-one conversations on empathy and self-awareness with all 7,000 of our team members. So we have a team member empathy coach and diversity inclusion coach, and we also have a leadership, 2 of them on leadership team that handle that function. So to that point, it can't just be like something you pushed out through an LMS and people get. It's not going to make them better. I think that you have to make sure the process includes collaboration and shared space to really make them understand. In regards to the first thing, I think I don't think the changes that are happening today are going to go away, David. So this, like, we've shown the world a new norm. Like, now people know that it's there, and it's not like they're not going to say, "Hey, we're going to turn that." It's like electricity. Once it was out, people just like they're using lights now. It's not like I'm going to sit in the dark because candles also work. It doesn't work that way. I think now that we've kind of opened Pandora's box here, I could get more people and train them in less space at an equal time. So from a business sense, it makes so much sense for businesses to train people this way that they're all over it now. And I think, too, that people want more freedom as it pertains to training. So I think that now that they no longer have to be locked into a room or oppressed by an instructor or a facilitator, like now they're like, hey, send it to me so I can learn it on my own thing, or provide me the means where I can just go to that event when I want to. Like the rabbit's out the hat, it's on. And I think that I don't think we're going to go backwards. I think that you're going to see the requirement for blended training and online training increase exponentially in the next 5 years, because it ain't going to slow down. Just like technology's not, this isn't going to slow down. Now that it's out, and we're never going back.
And you're saying that is driven as much by, and perhaps more so by the consumers, by the end users. In other words, this is what people want. This is Absolutely. In fact, that's a lot of what this is. It's not top down. It's like, this is an opportunity for people to do things differently, and they're embracing it.
I never knew I liked TikTok until I started watching TikTok videos. Like, now I'm like a half an hour a night. Like, this is the best thing ever. Now that people know that they can put it in their hand and that it's out there, why would I ever want to go back to sitting in a seat for 9 hours and be talked at?
Any other comments on this one? We've just got a couple more minutes before we wrap up. Julie.
Just to add something to what Matt said and actually what Linda said, we took one step further, and maybe you guys did too as well. It wasn't just, there was certainly a core focus on leadership training around empathy, but we added one other component, of course, when you think about the diversity and inclusion, but we brought in just our overall, anyone that wanted to participate in a book discussion, in a conversation about race and diversity. We opened it up and said we all want to speak, and we set ground rules around that. And the feedback has been so positive, and I think it was also exponential, right? You're not only dealing with the pandemic, but then you had this other thing that was hanging out, and it needed to be addressed. And from a culture perspective, we really stepped up the game and made sure that we address that. And we are now having quarterly book club discussions around that topic, and the feedback has been great.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we are actually amazingly, the time goes so quickly as we do this. We're kind of nearing the end of our time. So really quick, I want to go around and, if everyone can take maybe, 20 seconds or so, and, one parting thought to leave people with relating to your experience, maybe something that, that you would take away from your experience in this time of rapid change that you might recommend to someone else. So we'll just give everyone a few seconds to think through how they might want to leave this, and we'll start with whoever wants to start. So 20 seconds on what message you want to leave people with at the end of this. For the future.
I'll just say, David, that in remote environment where technology plays a critical role, human connections are actually more important than before. So anything we put in place as leaders ourselves or learning professionals, how we enable that personal connection, that authenticity, and all the things we talk about, empathy and stuff, I think it's going to be very important.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great. Julie.
Learning is a powerful tool. We can choose to elevate it now and absorb as much as we can. But with that, there is that personal touch that we need to not forget.
Matt.
Yeah, I think it's learning always should be learner focused first, and I think that where it's you got to evolve or die in this industry, and I think that the main thing is that like our learners have evolved, the technology has evolved, the times have evolved, so embrace the crazy because it's always going to be there. Like, and then not only that, but have fun with it, and then focus on the learners first, whether you're using technology or not using technology. Like, it's all about them in the first place. So I think if you can get it to them quicker, faster, and make it more self-directed, and make it something that's enjoyable, they're going to love you for it. And I think as long as you're focused on them first and genuine about that, the rest takes care of itself.
Great. Thanks so much. And the final thing I'd like to add to that is the concept of opportunity, that we're just at a time that it's the opportunity for change, and we're starting to see it already, that there have been a lot of ideas circulating, maybe that just been hard to get people to change from some of the traditional ways of doing things, and we're all kind of forced to rethink things now, and it's an opportunity to rethink the way we use technology, the way we humanize technology, and the way we think about people's individual learning and how they work together, and all of those things. So we are at the end of our time. I want to thank all of my panelists for your time today, and the audience as well. It's been a pleasure through the virtual system, and I really enjoyed it. So thanks so much. And I think I turn it over back to Denise. I think we wrap up, and thanks again to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.